everyone. Welcome to the weekly recap. So, all right, it's the last day in January.
Yeah.
And it's been a really interesting year in gaming. Okay, let me explain why. You have Nintendo selling cardboard.
Yes.
For quite a bit of money. You have Sony selling shoes.
Yeah.
Right? And then to top all that off, you have Microsoft giving all their games away for $10 a month.
Yes, you do.
So that's 2018. Fabulous.
It's been an interesting start to a year.
It's been an interesting and crazy start to a year. Microsoft earnings is one of our big topics. So that came out today, yesterday after hours. And then we have some acquisitions and rumors of acquisitions regarding Microsoft. And then as we get toward the end, we'll address Sea of Thieves Beta and comments from last video.
Yes, definitely. We got some interesting feedback in the comment section. Yeah. And even a little bit of it on Twitter from the last video. So
we will address that as we get kind of toward the end. So Microsoft's earnings, Q2 earnings, right? So that would be ending right around the end of December.
Yeah, fiscal Q2 for
fiscal
them
Q2.
for 2018.
Keeping in mind Microsoft's year runs June to...
Fiscal years are always off a little bit for all these different companies, and we're always trying to reconcile that whenever we talk about like Sony numbers versus Microsoft. That's another one of those interesting factors that always makes it seem a little weird.
Yeah.
When you're like, really okay, this quarter's numbers, you were saying that you had a profit because of X, Y, and Z, and then this quarter we're seeing, we can read the transcript, there's clearly losses and something going on. Yeah. So it's always that weird thing where it just doesn't match up properly.
It's really strange. And Microsoft has a particularly weird one because their fiscal year starts in June of all times. So that's really weird. So this is basically Q2. They did report earnings that were above and had a growth per share that was above what was expected. Yeah. So 96 cents per share was the earnings versus analysts were expecting 86 cents. Revenue was $28.92 billion.
Pretty incredible.
That's
for
Microsoft for you. Yeah, so that's amazing. And then that was expected to be 28.4. So the real revenue was.
Well, we talked about Netflix last video. Just want to throw in there. They only made $11 billion in total last year. Microsoft did 28, almost 29 in a quarter.
True. Netflix made $11 billion in a year.
Yeah.
Microsoft made almost 30 in a quarter. That's crazy. Yeah. And some really interesting places that we saw growth. So in general, Microsoft was up 12% year over year.
Yes.
We both know that's huge. That's a lot of growth year over year. That's usually it's in the 2 to 5% is kind of a normal growth margin.
Well, it depends on the sector, the market, what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's in a year where you had stiff competition from PlayStation 4 selling, 2 or 3 different SKUs very, very well, and PSVR, and you had the Switch come out. And then
that's crazy.
Nintendo have all these games that are selling 8, 9, 10 million copies, and they still did that against that type of competition. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy. Really huge growth, like completely outside of what would be expected for growth. Azure, which, you and I have talked about Azure, and I've talked about that I predict that that's the entire future really for Microsoft. That's where they're putting all their resources.
Yeah, I want to go back and watch all of our videos from the beginning because I want to see if we caught it on tape, because sometimes we'll do like a run through before we hit record. Right. And you basically predicted that they would go full on into cloud computing. I want to say like July is when you said that.
Quite a while ago. Yeah.
Or sometime further back. And a lot of your predictions about that have actually come true, and we're starting to see even more of that with some of this information.
Yeah, so Azure grew 98% in the quarter.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. That's doubling the business of Azure. And that my big point is that's where gaming is going. Gaming is going onto Azure. Case in point, PUBG.
Yeah.
PUBG, that every earnings call for the last 2 or 3 earnings calls, they've talked about the fact PUBG is running on Azure on the cloud. Yeah. And it's an example of how you can take gaming that direction. So gaming is going that way, for sure. That's exactly where gaming's headed. Gaming had an 8% growth, which sounds, I feel like last quarter was like 3 to 5, so that's a big growth.
Yeah.
But then even more impressive when you just mentioned what they were up against.
What they're up against, and the fact that you had some people holding their breath, saving their money for the X. So generally, when people are dropping a large sum like that, most gamers don't have a lot of money. They can't buy everything. Right. So they have to save up for something like an X and put a little bit towards a pre-order, here and there. Yeah. So they usually don't buy other stuff when that happens. So the other numbers might drop.
True.
So that's impressive as well.
Very impressive. And they did cite in one of the articles, they cited that a lot of that 8% growth was from the X. As far as revenue. We've talked about the fact consoles are not
They're not profitable. Making money on the console. Yeah. Pretty much nobody's really making money off of a console.
No. But they can grow their business
Yes.
8% or more than 8%, I think is what we're going to see in the future from that hardware. So that shows that they're getting support for their hardware, which will get them support for the software. And we maybe haven't seen that yet because people don't always buy those at the same time, especially if you buy something like an X that's that much of a chunk.
Yeah.
Really impressive, and actually we were speculating on some of these numbers just the other day, is the Xbox Live member network numbers. So it's grown from last quarter was 53 million
53. It dropped 2 million. It was at 55 at its highest point ever. Then it dropped down to 53.
And now it's at 59 million.
Yeah, so I've said this a few times. I've said it on our show. I've said it on podcasts before. Those numbers are fluctuating wildly. We're talking by millions every quarter. So that's why it's really hard for Microsoft to come out and say, this is how many gold subscribers we have. This is how many silver subscribers we have. The moment they say that ever, they're lying. Because the number just changed.
Exactly. Yeah. The subscription numbers are all over the place.
They're always going to be all over the place.
And we can't assume that this entire 59 million is actively and currently paying.
There's no way to know how many.
There's a difference in those numbers too. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy.
From people I trust, I have seen it estimated somewhere between 40 and 50 million paying.
Yeah. And that's a big estimate window because it really does fluctuate.
And it could fluctuate that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has some interesting connections to some other things. So one of the things that keeps getting mentioned in earnings, and it's actually really impactful that it's getting mentioned in earnings, is PUBG.
Yeah.
PUBG is such a phenomenon that it's making the CEO talk about it in earnings. And one of the reasons is they're talking about it using Azure. It's the future of Azure, and it's showing where that's going to go. So that kind of lends more credibility to the theory that maybe Microsoft is still going to lock PUBG down, possibly.
Yeah, so you're talking about some of the rumors that we're hearing.
Yeah, so I think it all really starts with Matt Booty, right? And you had some good comments as to what you really think is kind of behind all this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've said it before a couple of times now. The writing is on the wall with this stuff. They're actually literally telling you what they're going to do in interviews. Every time Satya Nadella does an interview, he actually tells you, and then within a year, you see some changes like what we've seen with Xbox Division come to fruition. He mentioned in an interview before that they want to make it the Netflix of games, basically. They want to emulate that service.
Focus on games as a service.
So they are, pound for pound, they are just copying what Netflix did over the last 11 years.
Yeah.
But they're doing it a lot faster. So that's really interesting as well. And then you have Phil Spencer saying, we're going more into games as a service. We want to figure out ways to. You kept seeing the word monetize come up in certain interviews.
Yeah.
And then you hear this news about Playfab. If you read between the lines on the 2 press releases about Playfab, I recommend everybody do that if you like numbers, if you like the business side of the industry.
Yeah.
You will see that word come up over and over and over again, monetize. Well, that's what they've been able to do. Matt Booty's taken a lot of the success for Minecraft post-acquisition.
Yeah, so monetizing after the acquisition.
Monetizing Minecraft continuously, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year.
And that's who they put over games.
And that's who they put over that. So they're going to try to do it with more stuff. PUBG would be a no-brainer. There's a way that you can get microtransactions or whatever you want to call whatever digital services are going to become as they evolve. There's a way that you continue to get those year after year. Valve has been doing it for decades now.
Yeah,
with people always joke about getting a new hat or whatever on certain games that are out there. So that's the way to do it. Writing's been on the wall. They've told you what they're going to do in interviews. All you got to do is pay attention. It's right there. So
pretty interesting. And let's talk a little bit about what Playfab is.
Yeah.
Because we did some research into that. So Kareem Chowdhury, which is one of the CVPs of gaming, came out and kind of announced that they had acquired Playfab. And Playfab's not a name that a lot of people would recognize. But again, what is Playfab's focus?
They basically create the systems that are on the back end that allow transactions to go through. Again, so what is a usual transaction? It could just be information going back and forth.
Sure.
But a lot of times it's actually the purchase of something within a game or a game as a service. So they basically are creating a backbone that studios all over the world there's over 1,000 studios using them right now, can basically just purchase that, kind of like the way you would, and before Microsoft owned it, you would license Havoc or you would license Simply Gone. What Playfab does is basically the exact same thing, but for the infrastructure of transactions happening basically instantaneous. So you don't have to build that system yourself for your game. a smaller developer, an indie developer in particular, doesn't have to do all the work and pay somebody to run that and keep it up to date and keep it running well and not going down all the time. Playfab basically does all that stuff on the back end.
And that's something we've discussed before, is how much there is on the back end. You release your game, and a lot of these games lately have not released and made the money that they wanted to make. And it's not over at that point. You've got to run the servers, you've got to update the content, you've got to fix the bugs. There's a lot of continuing operations. Part of the mission statement of Playfab is to engage, retain, and monetize players.
That word monetize always comes back up.
After the launch of a game. And that's exactly where Microsoft is going.
Absolutely.
That relates very well to games as a service, but it also relates to making sure that the games actually are monetizing. Especially if you go into Games Pass, you go into different ways of putting your games out there. This kind of thing is that's the exact right second step in what we're seeing Microsoft doing.
Definitely.
And they're pretty big from what I can tell. Like they have 1,200 games that are live right now. They have 1.5 billion transactions a day.
Yes.
They have tech that's used by Disney, and several other names were mentioned.
Quite a bit of money coming in through there.
That's a lot.
And they're going to build that into Azure, from what I'm understanding as well.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. So that'll be really interesting to see. You know, Playfab needs Azure, and Microsoft needs something like Playfab. So that's
Cloud is going to be eventually, as you and I both have talked about, bigger than everything else there is.
Absolutely.
In the tech world, in the gaming world, and everything, it's going to eventually be the biggest thing that there is. They're catching up very quickly to Amazon, and some of they got out in front of everybody when it comes to cloud tech, and now Microsoft is like, we're gonna catch you here. So it's looking very good. In particular, with cloud being a game focus, I've said it before. If you go back and watch our really old videos, that people are eventually going to move away from having hardware in their home, the giant PC tower, the device that takes up a lot of space. We all have multiple devices like that. Eventually, you're going to be able to just access the cloud through new technologies that we haven't seen
yet
emerge yet.
True. And also interesting is so when you hear the analysts talking about the earnings report, you're hearing a lot about cloud compute and how impressive the growth of Azure is, because cloud compute is one of those industries that everybody has their eye on right now. It's going to get huge. It already is huge. Microsoft has 20% market share in cloud compute, which is really impressive. They're basically second to Amazon.
Yes.
So it will be very interesting to see, because they're really the first company that's taking that into gaming. They're the first company that's, if you look at, as you always say, the writing on the wall, you look at the steps that they've taken.
Yeah.
They made gaming way bigger.
You know what's really funny about that, to cut you off there, if you have to remember it, go ahead, but Amazon has looked at the possibility of getting further into gaming.
Yes, they have.
One of the things, the roadblocks that has existed there is they do research about how much has Microsoft lost in gaming, how much has Sony lost in gaming. Right. You can just look at a snapshot of a decade, and we're talking billions, if not tens of billions of dollars lost.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
That's the reason why all these companies, Apple, Amazon, all these companies are kind of trepidatious about jumping in. So they're trying to figure out a way in that doesn't cost them an arm and a leg. Cloud could be one of those ways.
Yeah, so they've all been watching for a long time. There's always rumors. There's always a new rumor going around about another acquisition in gaming, and you usually hear a name like Amazon.
Yes.
But they haven't, right?
Yeah.
So that's a risky industry. Their advancement in the cloud could make it easier, but I think it's still something. I think Microsoft's out ahead of that, because they've got their cloud running gaming.
Well, the speed at which Microsoft is making moves is faster than the speed at which Amazon has done it.
Yeah.
So that's what's interesting.
And Microsoft is well known for having really, really big accounts, huge companies that are 100% signed with Microsoft. So they can make some of those moves really quickly. Another thing that we heard as rumor, it's still rumor, but we've got sites running with it all over the place, is that maybe possibly Microsoft is trying to acquire EA. You have a slightly different theory on that. You don't necessarily think, they're trying to acquire EA.
Well, so the rumor has been over this last few days that they're looking at EA as a possibility. That seems to be the biggest one people are running with.
Yeah.
Steam as a possibility. That seems to be or not Steam, but Valve as a whole.
Yeah.
Valve runs Steam. So that seems to be a bit of a possibility. And then you have PUBG, or the PlayerUnknown company that runs that as a possibility. Bluehole? Well, aren't they called PlayerUnknown Group?
I don't know. Are they?
Yeah,
I've heard some slight changes. I haven't heard Bluehole in a while.
Yeah, we haven't been hearing that.
It's at least funny. I at least like to throw it in there just for a good laugh.
So you have all those things kind of up in the air. That could have been started by somebody on a forum somewhere. You never know how these things got out there. It could also be misdirection. Sometimes that happens with rumors.
Yeah.
And it could also be somebody throwing it out there to test the waters and see what kind of reaction this gets. Right. We've heard about companies acquiring other companies for decades here in America where they'll throw it out there and it's a little too big of an acquisition and everybody will cry monopoly.
Yeah.
And then they end up backing off. Things don't go through.
Right.
Happens all the time. I haven't really heard anybody say monopoly for these rumors.
Not yet.
So that's an interesting factor. But yeah, my theory, to go to what you referenced, is that it could be that they're buying one of these three things, maybe even two. Mm-hmm. Some people say all three. I doubt that is even a possibility.
That would be big.
But
that would be a big move.
Hang on. They have well over $1 billion in overseas money that they could bring back to essentially Microsoft whole within America, the corporation of Microsoft.
True.
They could use all of that money in an acquisition to buy something. So that's just like cash right there. They can pull in anytime they want.
Yeah.
So that there may be some truth to some of that thing. What I think they would do is go to EA, or what I would do if I were them, go to EA and say, we'll take off some of these IPs that haven't been performing as well lately. Even though we know that Dead Space made money, it wasn't quite enough for EA to see a future there.
Yeah.
We've seen all the problems with Andromeda. We don't know if it made its money back yet or not.
Mm-hmm.
Mass Effect series, they could get those two. They could maybe buy BioWare from EA. Maybe EA hasn't seen the type of returns on BioWare that they wanted to see. We don't know those numbers. They may have made money off of BioWare, but they maybe didn't make the kind of money they were looking at. Yeah. So they might be able to acquire some things. That, to me, seems a little more likely than the entire company of EA. That would be the biggest acquisition ever in video games if that happened.
Right. Which doesn't mean it wouldn't, but it would be surprising.
Yeah.
Microsoft does make big moves in some of their sectors. Gaming is not a sector that's known for making moves that big, but then again, they're getting a new emphasis. Yes. So your theory is more that there is possibly something going on with EA, but it's
a new emphasis. You say a new emphasis. They're all in on gaming.
They're all in on gaming.
4 huge promotions in 12 months.
So they could legitimately do something crazy.
Yeah. Havoc, Playfab, Simply Gone. Whatever, all the other things that they've acquired recently.
Yeah, and they've got, early last year they started putting up CVPs, then they're putting up Phil Spencer as EVP. That's crazy. They saw some numbers, and we saw what they were, and then Matt Booty goes right into that.
If any of these rumors are true, it appears they're trying to buy up the entire gaming universe.
Yeah, and we have some interesting theories, and we'll move into our last segment, which will connect back to this, so we will end up back on this topic.
Yeah.
But we do have some interesting theories about what this whole thing really may be and how big this really may be. So we had some comments from last video.
Yeah.
And I want to address a few of the things kind of that I've heard. So obviously I'm on the unpopular side.
I didn't get any criticism. It was all you.
You
this
did
time.
not.
This is the first time.
That's
Usually
crazy.
It's just me getting attacked.
I got attacked. I was already aware that I was going to be on a very unpopular side of Games Pass.
Yeah.
And it just to be clear, I didn't say like, oh, terrible idea, worst idea I've ever seen or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I have concern about that. And we're open to comments, we're open to discussion. That's one of the main reasons that we do this.
Yeah, I know you were the one being attacked, so it wasn't fun for you in the comments, but I liked reading the comments.
I'm sure you did.
No, I don't mean it that way. I mean, like, anything that's criticism, if somebody can be intelligent in their response to us
and
or
give
their
us
rebuttal,
some real feedback.
It's rare that we get that, but it's actually becoming a little more often, which is good.
We have certain people that do.
Yeah, we have certain people that actually know how to write. They actually seem like they learned in school how, proper, basically.
Better than people that work for the big sites.
Writing structure. Yeah, we've made fun of, I'm not going to say his name anymore, but made fun of a certain writing style that's out there. So we liked seeing that. That is amazing stuff. We always respond. If you read our comments and you see us heart something where it sounds like they're attacking us, it's because we like the fact that they were able to string together coherent sentences.
Yeah, there's intellect in the attack. And, I don't consider most things attacks, but I will say, I have had some comments, and some of them not from our regular supporters, that essentially boiled down to like, oh, she doesn't understand business. She doesn't know how business works. So that's where, I've had people go out of their way to kind of patronize me in that angle.
Yeah.
And that's where I will make a clarification.
Yeah.
So I don't talk about my personal life, but I do know how business works. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a company. Mm-hmm. I own a highly profitable company. And that's where I get a lot of my feedback from something like this. That's where I get my concern.
Well, not only that, because, anyone that wants to criticize you could say anyone can start up a company with the right capital or the right idea.
Sure.
But it's not just that. You started when you were 16 and you've written, from what I understand about you, you've written the game plan for certain companies that are out there. You wrote the whole thing yourself. Then you went on to help other companies reach levels of success they had never seen before. And then you started your own using the money that you made from doing those things in the past. And you're very young.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at my career, 15 years in corporate America, I'm embarrassed by my 15 years when I look at what you've done in such a short period of time. Wow. So she knows a thing or two about what she's talking about when she's looking at numbers, and something doesn't quite add up in her mind.
Right.
Which is essentially what I guess is the heart of what you were saying.
Yeah, and really we didn't even get into the heart of what my thought is on it, because it was really kind of a short conversation. It was our initial conversation on Games Pass.
Yeah.
My thought is, and I actually have a massive theory, and I'm not going to put this massive theory in this video.
Yeah, not yet. You got to wait on that one.
It's really big. It wouldn't even make sense to a lot of people right now, but I do have a theory as to where this is going, and if I were to be correct in any aspect of this theory, it would shake the entire gaming industry up big time. It would change everything that we know about gaming. My concern, some of the things that I heard people say was, there's not, the numbers that you ran in the video aren't, they're including third party. Like if you're going to buy 30 to 50
That was
games
the main criticism that made sense against what you're saying. Yeah.
So, and actually, I will admit, I was not actually thinking much about third party versus first party when I did run those numbers. Those were kind of my initial reaction numbers. But if you look at the list, there are third-party games. There's 40 to 50 third-party games on the list now, the first initial list that they put out. There are 40 to 50 third-party multi-plat games. So my theory and the way that I understand this is Microsoft could not put out Games Pass, charge $120 a year, and be putting out their anywhere from 2 to 4 games per year that are their exclusive games that are what people are focused on this being about, right?
Yeah.
So that opens up too much manipulation in the numbers if they were to do that. There has to be more to it than that.
It just makes it seem a little strange because if, say they did what it appeared for a brief moment in time. Say they
is just their first parties.
Just their first parties and just on Xbox, right? Because it says Xbox Game Pass. Technically, if it's a Play Anywhere, you can play it on PC, but it's actually not a PC Game Pass. It really is just an Xbox Game Pass. So you got to look at that and go, well, how does the math work? Which is what you were doing.
Right.
If you only have 2, look at the recent past for Microsoft. Yeah. If you only have 2 or 3 first-party games coming out a year, which is what they've been averaging, well, that's about the same amount of money either way. So that's what you were saying. So there's got to be something more going on here, essentially. There's got to be, you said there's third-party support already in there. There's got to be some type of deal coming. Maybe it could be something like with the EA thing that I talked about, where they get some of those exclusives coming as well.
It's got to be something. Yeah. And that's where Microsoft actually, as an entrepreneur, Microsoft is a company that I am wowed by. I think a lot of people are wowed by Microsoft. Yes. They are huge.
$700 billion just recently.
Yeah, they're growing year over year. They have made some crazy moves and acquisitions. They have been incredibly successful, and that is very true. So it can't be true that they're just going to put their first parties out and it's maybe 2 in a year, because in theory somebody could, pay their $10 for a month, play a first party title, hurry up and get it done in that month, and then wait till the other one comes out, and there's a lot of manipulation in that number. And then that would not be profitable.
Yeah, so people could cancel.
Even a small sector of your people do that.
I've already seen people online saying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subscribe for a month, pay my $10, cancel, wait till the next game comes out, and then do that. So,
they can't make money off of that, and it would not be Microsoft to not see that. Yeah. To just put this out and be all excited about it and not even realize that people are going to do that. Of course they realize that. Yeah. So there's more to it. There has to be a third party support where they're either going to give some kind of spiff to third party developers to put their games on there, or they might be acquiring third party developers or IPs, but there has to be more to it. And I do think that the more to it does involve third party, and until they expand even further, that's where my concern comes in. Is there more of us that buy a lot of third party games every month and we pay full price for them, or are there more people that wouldn't actually buy that many unless you gave them something like Games Pass?
Definitely.
And there's a lot more conversation to happen.
Ongoing
there.
Conversation.
There's a lot more conversation.
Game Pass will be talked about for the rest of this year, no doubt about
Absolutely. That. And you have some impressive numbers. You've really run the numbers of Netflix. And how Netflix has done what they've done.
So much so that we'd have to do like 2 videos to cover it.
Just to cover your Netflix information.
Yes.
But ultimately, that is what Microsoft is targeting. And if they do find a way, and that's where my opinion is I think that way involves bigger things than we think it involves. I think it has to. But if they do find a way to do that, Netflix is incredibly successful considering what they are for how little overhead they have. They're pulling in $11 billion a year with very little overhead on what they're doing. They've started taking over their own production. They've made exactly the same moves that we would expect from Microsoft.
Definitely, yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what happens. It will be we will continue talking about it when we do find out other things. Check out the list. We'll link the list in the description, but check out the list of games that are available now and let us know what you think, because that was when I saw those comments, that was what I did is I looked up the list and I was like, no, this is
There are some games that would be technically third party because they're on more than one platform, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of where I was like, well, I wasn't thinking about those numbers, but let me look up the list, and in fact, they are in there. Yeah. So let us know what you think about that. Is there anything else? Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves, yeah.
Did you play in the beta?
Yeah, I finally got a little bit more time in the beta. I was still a little underwhelmed, so that's still my initial feeling. Yeah. But I know that it's only 10 to 20% of what's going to be in the final game, so I can't wait to do that. I did end up having a lot of fun the other night. We finally got to play, and I really can't wait to see what the full game is going to be. Yeah. I've got it no matter what. I already pre-ordered it and paid for it, so I'm still going to keep that there. Okay. I'm gonna, even with, you know what? They haven't sold me 100% on Game Pass, which is weird because I actually am sold on it. But not in
for everybody else.
No, not in the literal sense. I haven't paid the money for it yet. Right. First of all, I have a month thing that I haven't used. Right. But I do still want to support Rare. I still want to give them the $60. People are going to say I'm dumb for doing that, but I already paid for it. Do it. So it is what it is. The thing that they have to announce for Game Pass to make me 100% all in is 5-day early access. And I don't care. I'll pay $20 for it.
That's really something
that's what I care about.
Which is interesting with the EA rumor, because that's one of the things EA is doing that Microsoft
it's a trial, but yes.
come up with is an early access if you're paying this monthly. Yeah. Because then you might actually get people that are dipping into both. Yeah, so definitely. That would be interesting. I must be following the wrong people on social media, because I didn't get hardly any time to play in Sea of Thieves, and I kind of echo the slightly underwhelmed, but I think it was almost more of, I almost looked at it as a tutorial. Like, it was like, here's how you get your mission, here's how you go there, here's how you drive the boat. Yeah. It wasn't designed to be where, the bigger part of the game is going to be. Yeah. But all I heard in the days leading up to, when I finally got to play the beta, which was just a night or two ago, was like, two major things. The servers are a huge mess. Like, no one I knew that was playing it, which I knew a lot of people playing it. Nobody was saying that. But I was seeing article after article after article. Servers are a mess. People can't get in the game.
If you got all your news just from these articles that have been plastered everywhere,
you would think it was a disaster.
You would think that, first of all, you couldn't play the game. And then secondly, you would think that if you did get in, you would be throwing up everywhere.
Yeah, so that was the second one, was seasick. Yeah. So wait, hold on. You can't get into the game because the servers are a mess. But you're seasick. So you're not seasick from the game.
Well, they were obviously watching someone stream it, so.
Yeah,
It was also a fake recorded stream that wasn't real.
That Larry Herb was playing.
Larry Herb, must be where it started.
Too. I must just be following the wrong people, because everybody that I've talked to that actually did play the beta
seems to love it.
Loved it. I didn't run into any issues. You didn't run into any issues that you told me about. No. So that is interesting. But it will be interesting to see what happens.
I tried to get seasick. I literally did.
I actually did too. I'm not even kidding. Like, I actually am kind of a motion sick person. So I got in the boat and I stared at the water and I was like, let's see if I can.
Yeah, first person shooters aren't really your friend, but.
I couldn't. Yeah, first person shooters make me sick. Yeah. I could not get sick in Sea of Thieves despite it being first person. And despite the water. Mm-hmm. Couldn't even. It's so weird, so interesting.
I'm sure there's some people out there that do.
There probably are, but again, they're probably focusing on the wrong part of the screen or something, some weird set of events.
There's a way to look at it. I used to get seasick from FPS as well. There's a way to look at the screen where you don't see it that way. It's like you're looking through it, and you won't get sick anymore if you can achieve that.
Yeah. But if you look at eBay, the Sea of Thieves stuff.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's sold out on Amazon, first of all. Mm-hmm. Both copies of it, and then both editions that you could do. And then the controller's now selling for like $100 on eBay. So
that's crazy.
Obviously, people are pretty hyped about this game. People are pretty
excited about this. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see where that goes.
This could be another PUBG thing for Microsoft.
Seriously, it is a phenomenon because it's all about the multiplayer experience. So that's it, I believe.
Gotta be it.
So again, we're continuing to try to hit the requirements for the newer channels. A lot of people have been sharing. We have lots of shout outs, I'm sure, to do. So shout out to Mopar.
Yeah, Mopar has been sharing our stuff for a while, giving us some great feedback as well. And shout out to Infinity Doc. He's one of the ones that sent us the article today.
Sent us the article about the gaming revenue growth.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is it, right? I hope we didn't forget anything.
That's, I think, pretty much it.
All right. Thanks for watching.